What happens when an entire city becomes a hunting ground? When locked doors offer no protection and sleep becomes a death sentence? This is the story of America's first documented serial killer, a phantom who terrorized New Orleans for nearly 2 years, leaving behind a trail of blood, broken families, and unanswered questions that haunt the city to this day. His weapon of choice? The victim's own axes. His calling card? Doors carved open with surgical precision. His targets? Families sleeping peacefully in their beds, unaware that death was already inside their homes. May 22nd, 1918. The Great War rages across Europe, but in New Orleans, a different kind of horror is about to be unleashed. Joseph and Catherine Maggio have just closed their small grocery store for the night. Italian immigrants living the American dream, working hard, serving their community, building a life one customer at a time. They have no idea these are their final hours together. Somewhere in the humid Louisiana night, a killer moves with purpose. He carries simple tools, a chisel, perhaps a small hand drill. He's done this before. The method is precise, patient, almost surgical. A door panel carefully removed, creating just enough space for a hand to reach through and turn the lock from inside. The killer moves through their home like a ghost. He knows exactly where to find what he needs. He uses their own axe, their own razor. In a twisted violation of trust, the killer turns the victim's possessions into instruments of death. Andrew Maggio's screams echo through the neighborhood, shattering the morning calm. What he finds defies comprehension. His brother and sister-in-law butchered in their own bed, blood soaking the sheets where they should have been safe. Detective John D'Antonio surveys the carnage and immediately recognizes this is no ordinary crime. The precision of entry, the ritualistic use of the victim's belongings, the complete absence of robbery, this is the work of someone truly dangerous. 3 weapons used in sequence. First the axe for the initial attack, then the razor to ensure death. This killer doesn't just murder, he executes with methodical efficiency. Word spreads through Little Italy like wildfire. Other grocery owners feel a chill of recognition. This wasn't random violence. It felt personal, calculated, and terrifyingly specific. But the Maggio murders are just the beginning. The killer has tasted blood, and he's hungry for more. 36 days after the Maggio murders, as the city begins to breathe normally again, the killer strikes once more. Louis Basuma and Harriet Lowe sleep behind their modest store, their lives intertwined with the rhythm of their neighborhood. They have no idea death is literally carving its way inside. The signature is unmistakable. The same chiseled door panel, the same careful selection of the victim's own axe, the same surgical precision in the attack. Unlike the Maggios, both victims survive the initial assault. Basuma, blood streaming from his head wound, manages to stumble outside where he's found by neighbor John Zanker, who will never forget the sight of the bloodied man in the dawn light. At Charity Hospital, doctors fight to save both lives. Harriet Lowe's injuries are particularly severe. The axe has penetrated deep into her skull, but both cling to life with remarkable tenacity. For the first time, the newspapers give the killer a name that will haunt New Orleans: the Axeman. Detective D'Antonio takes one look at the chiseled door panel and knows immediately what they're dealing with. The same killer, the same signature, the same terrifying precision. But then the case takes a bizarre turn that will confuse investigators for months. In her delirium, Harriet Lowe makes a shocking accusation. She claims Louis Basuma is a German spy with secret documents hidden in their store. In 1918, with America deep in World War I, such accusations carry deadly weight. Police discover letters written in what appears to be code. Basuma, still recovering from his injuries, finds himself suspected not only as a victim, but as a potential enemy agent. The letters are eventually revealed to be family correspondence written in Yiddish, but the damage is done. The spy allegations add another layer of confusion to an already mysterious case. After fighting for her life for over a month, Harriet Lowe finally succumbs to her injuries. Her death transforms the case from assault to murder and intensifies both the investigation and the public's growing terror. With Lowe's death, the Axeman now has 3 confirmed victims, but he's just getting started. On the very night Harriet Lowe dies, the Axeman prepares to shatter every assumption the police have made about his pattern. Anna Schneider checks the locks and windows before bed. Her husband Ed works nights as a bartender, leaving his pregnant wife alone in their home. The August heat is oppressive, windows cracked open, hoping for relief. This attack breaks the pattern in crucial ways. No chiseled door panel, no axe from the property. Instead, he uses a heavy lamp from the Schneider living room. The killer is adapting, evolving, becoming more unpredictable. Anna jolts awake to find a presence in her bedroom. Before she can process what's happening, a heavy object crashes down on her head. Though dazed, she remains conscious long enough to see a dark figure looming over her bed. Ed Schneider returns from work to find his wife unconscious and their home in chaos. His frantic call for help brings police and medical assistants rushing to the scene. Miraculously, both Anna and her unborn child survive. She delivers a healthy baby boy just days after the attack, despite her severe injuries. When she finally speaks with investigators, she can provide only the vaguest description. A large man, she thinks, but little more than a shadow in the darkness. The attack on Anna Schneider sends a new wave of panic through New Orleans. If the Axeman is willing to attack a pregnant woman who isn't Italian or a grocer, then his victim selection remains a terrifying mystery. Anyone could be next. 5 days later, the Axeman strikes again. This time, the victim is Joseph Romano, an elderly Italian man who lives with his 2 nieces, Pauline and Mary Bruno. At 2:30 a.m., the Bruno sisters hear strange sounds from their uncle's room. As they approach to investigate, they see something that will haunt them forever: a man climbing out through the window. Inside, they find their uncle, with his head split open by axe blows. Despite immediate medical attention, Romano dies 2 days later, but not before the sisters provide the first real description of the killer. A dark-complexioned man of average height, solidly built, wearing a dark suit and slouched hat. It's not much, but it confirms that the killer is physically imposing and confident enough to attack even when others are present in the house. The Romano attack perfectly fits the original pattern: an Italian victim, nighttime entry, and an axe as the murder weapon. But there's a new element of audacity. The killer struck despite the presence of other people and fled when discovered, rather than attacking the witnesses. This growing boldness troubles investigators. It suggests a killer becoming more confident with each attack, perhaps even enjoying the notoriety building around his crimes. The entire city seems to be holding its breath, waiting for the next attack. Police establish special units to watch Italian businesses and homes. Armed vigilante groups patrol their neighborhoods. Then, unexpectedly, the attacks stop. August gives way to September, then October, with no new incidents. The city remains on edge, but as weeks pass without violence, some begin to hope that perhaps the nightmare is over. This quiet period proves to be nothing more than an intermission. The Axeman isn't finished with New Orleans. He's simply waiting for the right moment to return and reignite the terror. 7 long months have passed since Joseph Romano's murder. New Orleans has cautiously begun to heal. The Axeman hasn't been forgotten, but the immediate fear has faded as life returns to normal routines. Then the letter arrives. Someone at the Times-Picayune opens an envelope and finds inside a message that will send shockwaves through the city. The letter claims to be from the Axeman himself. The letter begins with a mocking tone that immediately chills readers. The writer identifies himself as the Axeman and proceeds to taunt the police for their failure to capture him. But it's what comes next that transforms the letter from mere taunting into something far more sinister. The writer claims to be a supernatural entity, not human, but a spirit and a fell demon from the hottest hell. The Axeman announces his intention to visit New Orleans again on Tuesday night, March 19th. But then comes the strangest part of all, his fondness for jazz music and a promise that anyone playing jazz will be spared. The Times-Picayune publishes the letter in full, and the city's reaction is unlike anything anyone has ever seen. Whether genuine or from someone pretending to be the killer, the threat is taken seriously. On the night of March 19th, New Orleans becomes a symphony of jazz. From the grandest mansions to the humblest shotgun houses, music pours from every window and doorway. Dance halls and saloons pack with people seeking safety in numbers and rhythm. Even those who had previously condemned jazz as sinful embrace it as salvation. Every jazz musician in the city is working that night, playing from sunset to sunrise. The entire city becomes a musical fortress, defying the threatened evil with brass instruments and syncopated rhythms. Detective D'Antonio isn't relying solely on music for protection. The entire police force is mobilized, with officers patrolling in record numbers, paying special attention to silent houses. The night of March 19th passes peacefully. No attacks, no home invasions, no victims. The music stops, the bands go home, and the immediate threat seems to have passed. New Orleans has faced down the Axeman with jazz and emerged victorious, but the victory is desperately short-lived. Just 3 days after the jazz night, terror returns with a vengeance. The Cortimiglia family, Charles, Rosie, and their 2-year-old daughter Mary, live behind the grocery store. The family awakens to the nightmare they thought jazz had prevented. A backdoor panel has been chiseled away. The killer's trademark calling card has returned. Charles tries to protect his wife and daughter, but is immediately struck down with an axe. Rosie, clutching little Mary, tries to shield her child, but the attacker brings the axe down on both of them. Rosie's skull is fractured in multiple places. Little Mary receives a fatal blow to her head. Neighbours hear the commotion, and the axeman flees into the night. Charles and Rosie are rushed to the hospital in critical condition. Both parents survive their injuries, but their precious daughter does not. The murder of a child adds a new dimension of horror to the axeman's crimes. The city, which had just celebrated its musical victory over evil, is plunged back into nightmare. In her grief and pain, Rosie Cortimiglia makes a shocking accusation. She claims the attackers were her landlord, Orlando Giordano, and his son Frank. Police arrest both men despite their protests of innocence. The arrests provide a sense of closure for a terrified public desperate to believe the nightmare is over. But the case against the Giordanos is problematic from the start. Orlando is elderly and frail, hardly capable of the physically demanding attack. Frank has solid alibis. Moreover, the attack bears all the hallmarks of previous Axeman incidents. Despite inconsistencies, the Giordanos are charged with murder and attempted murder. The arrests create a false sense of security that settles over New Orleans like a comfortable blanket. But Detective D'Antonio isn't convinced. He continues investigating, certain that the real Axeman remains free. His suspicions will soon be proven correct in the most dramatic way possible. 5 months after the Cortimiglia attack, with the Giordanos still in jail, awaiting trial, another axe attack occurs. The victim is Steve Boca, an Italian grocer. The pattern is unmistakable. Boca is attacked while sleeping, his skull fractured by axe blows. The killer entered by removing a backdoor panel, the same signature method. Nothing is stolen, it's the axeman's work, no question. If the Giordanos were the axemen, how could identical attacks be continuing while they sit in jail? The case against them begins to crumble. The Boca attack is followed by another on September 3rd. Sarah Laumann, a young woman living alone, is attacked while sleeping and suffers severe head injuries from an axe. The intruder enters through a window and leaves the axe, which belonged to Laumann, on her front lawn. Like other victims, Laumann survives, but can provide no description. 2 new attacks, while the supposed axeman is in custody, begin to unravel the case against the Giordanos. Public opinion starts to shift. Questions are raised about the investigation's methods. The pressure mounts when Mike Pepitone becomes what will prove to be the axeman's final victim. Pepitone, another Italian grocer, is killed in his bedroom while his wife Esther sleeps beside him. Esther Pepitone awakens to find a large man standing over her husband's body, axe in hand. For a moment, woman and killer face each other in the darkness. The killer flees when she screams, vanishing into the night before neighbors can respond. But this time, there's a witness who has seen the Axeman clearly. Esther provides the most detailed description yet. A heavy-set, dark-complexioned man, well-dressed in a dark suit and hat, about 6 feet tall. This matches earlier vague descriptions. With the Axeman clearly still active, while the Giordanos remain in custody, their case collapses completely. In a dramatic reversal, Rosie Cortimiglia recants her accusation, admitting she falsely accused them under police pressure. The father and son are released after spending nearly a year in jail for crimes they didn't commit, their lives forever damaged by false accusations. The vindication of the Giordanos leaves the city back where it started. All the old theories resurface, and new ones emerge as investigators scramble to understand what they're truly dealing with. The investigation into the Axeman murders represents one of the most challenging cases in early American law enforcement history. Detective D'Antonio and his colleagues work with crude forensic tools, no fingerprint databases, no DNA analysis, no psychological profiling. They have to rely on shoe leather, intuition, and hope that somewhere among the hundreds of leads and tips, they'll find the thread that will unravel the mystery. 3 major theories emerge. The Black Hand theory gains early traction. This criminal organization is known for extorting Italian immigrants, but the extreme violence of axe murders in victims' beds is unusual even for them. D'Antonio interviews dozens of community members, most reluctant to discuss organized crime for fear of retaliation. Those who do speak suggest the attacks don't match typical Black Hand methods. The second theory focuses on ethnic hatred. Anti-Italian sentiment exists in New Orleans, with the 1891 mass lynching of 11 Italian men still fresh in community memory. But not all victims were Italian, weakening this theory. The third investigation focuses on similar crimes in other cities. Between 1911 and 19, a series of axe murders occurred in Texas and Louisiana, with striking similarities to the New Orleans cases. A man named Joseph Mumphrey had been arrested for some Texas attacks and served time in prison until 1918, just before the New Orleans killings began. The timing is suggestive, but no direct evidence links Mumphrey to the New Orleans crimes. The letter to the Times-Picayune adds another dimension. Handwriting analysis is primitive, but experts examine the letter for distinctive characteristics. The paper and ink are common varieties, providing no useful forensic information. The letter's supernatural claims and jazz ultimatum suggest to some that the killer might be mentally unstable. Psychiatric professionals are consulted, though their ability to develop useful profiles is limited. The method of entry receives renewed attention. The removal of door panels, creating just enough space for a hand to reach through, suggests someone familiar with breaking and entering techniques. The precision of the axe blows also draws scrutiny. The attacks target victims' skulls in ways that are often fatal but sometimes survivable, suggesting to some that the killer might have anatomical knowledge. Despite the dedicated efforts of investigators like D'Antonio, the limitations of early forensic science, combined with the killer's methodical approach, create a puzzle that remains unsolved. Over the decades since the Axeman's reign of terror ended, countless theories have emerged about his identity. Some developed during the original investigation, others arose years later as criminologists re-examined the case. The most persistent theory centers on Joseph Mumphrey, whose life seemed to intersect with the Axeman's activities in suspicious ways. Most significantly, he was shot and killed in Los Angeles in 1921 by Esther Pepitone, widow of the Axeman's final victim. According to newspaper reports, Esther claimed to have recognized Mumphrey as the man she'd seen standing over her husband's body. She'd apparently tracked him to California and taken the law into her own hands. But the Mumphrey theory has problems. Records linking him to earlier Texas murders are incomplete. His physical description doesn't perfectly match eyewitness accounts. The circumstances of his death have been questioned by researchers. Another theory focuses on the jazz connection. The Axeman's letter expressed fondness for jazz music, Some researchers suggest the killer might have been connected to the jazz scene, seeking to promote the genre through notoriety. This theory, while creative, lacks substantive evidence and fails to explain the specific targeting of victims or the pattern of attacks. Modern criminologists have applied contemporary understanding of serial killer psychology to the case. Geographic profiling suggests the killer likely lived in or was very familiar with central New Orleans. The methodical nature of attacks, lack of sexual assault or robbery, and apparent enjoyment of public attention are consistent with a killer motivated by psychological gratification rather than practical gain. One theory gaining support is that the Axeman may have had a personal connection to one or more victims. This could explain specific targeting, with other attacks serving as cover crimes to obscure the true target. However, no clear connections between the various victims have ever been established beyond their predominant Italian heritage and occupation as grocers. Perhaps the most likely explanation is that the Axeman was an otherwise unremarkable individual whose identity has been lost to history. He may have died, been imprisoned for another crime, or simply moved away. What is certain is that the Axeman case represents an early example of serial killing in America, predating the term serial killer by decades. The methodical attacks, lack of traditional motive, and psychological game with the public foreshadowed later cases. For the survivors, life after the Axeman was never the same. Louis Basuma struggled with headaches and memory problems for the rest of his life. Anna Schneider developed a pathological fear of darkness that persisted for years. Charles and Rosie Cortimiglia, having lost their daughter and falsely accused the Giordanos, eventually separated. The trauma and guilt proved too much for their marriage to withstand. The Giordano family, vindicated after nearly a year of wrongful imprisonment, found it difficult to rebuild their lives. Though legally exonerated, they faced lingering suspicion and eventually sold their grocery store. For the Italian community as a whole, the Axeman attacks reinforced their sense of vulnerability in American society. Many saw in the killings another manifestation of the prejudice they faced as immigrants. The case influenced early American law enforcement, demonstrating the need for better forensic techniques, interagency cooperation, and understanding of serial criminal behavior. The Axeman story has inspired countless books, films, and television shows, cementing his place in American criminal folklore. The case represents a turning point in how society understood and dealt with serial murder. Detective D'Antonio never officially closed the case. Various individuals confessed over the years, but none could provide details that weren't already public knowledge. Modern criminologists suggest that contemporary forensic techniques might have identified the Axeman, but in the New Orleans of 1918 to 1919, even the most diligent investigation couldn't penetrate the darkness concealing his identity. After the Pepitone murder in October 1999, the attacks stopped as suddenly as they had begun. Various theories emerged. Perhaps the killer died, was imprisoned for another crime, or simply moved to continue his killing spree elsewhere. The city remained on alert for months, but the next attack never came. Gradually, the immediate terror faded, though the memory of those dark months remained embedded in the city's consciousness.